Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Hey everyone, welcome to a very special edition of Return of the Living Geeks. We have a very special co-host today, and that is Brandon Perras. He directed the movie Death Drop Gorgeous, which is currently streaming on Shudder, as well as some other great VOD sites. And we have a very special guest, David Del Valle. He's a historian, author, legend. And we are hell raising some funds for the Trevor Project. So I'll tell you a little bit about the project, first of all. It was founded in 1998, and it's a pretty amazing nonprofit that focuses on suicide prevention among the LGBTQ youth. They provided a toll-free number that people can call, and there's trained counselors to help them out with whatever they need. And we hope that you donate some money. The link is in the chat. So, if you can give anything, that would be amazing. So we're going to play a little game as an icebreaker, and that is two truths and a lie. Do you want me to kick it off, or who wants to?
Well,
Yeah,
you kick it off since I don't know what you're.
All right. So it's pretty simple. I'm going to tell two true statements and a lie, and you all have to guess which is the lie. So my first one is I partied with an actor from a John Waters film. Udo Kier complimented me on my hair. And I asked Tobey Maguire for an autograph, and he told me to F off. So which one do you think is the lie?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Tobey Maguire's the lie.
Okay, maybe. Or what's your guess?
I'll go with the Udo Kier.
Okay, so David, you are correct. That one was the lie.
See, Toby's too nice to do that, and he's too aware of his audience. That's why I did
that. So the John Waters actor was kind of cool. It was you guys have seen Dirty Shame?
Yeah.
The guy that played Papa Bear, I met him at a party, which was pretty cool.
Nice.
For the bear party.
Maybe.
Were you a bunch of bears? Is that what was going on? Uh-oh.
I'll never tell.
Yeah, sure. Well, I will.
And Udo, I know, well, David, I know you know Udo very well. And this was at a convention, and I'm trying to think, it was when the new Rob Zombie's Halloween came out, and they had the entire cast there.
Utterly awful movie.
Yeah.
Hideous movie. Please don't make any more.
Yeah. But you know what? Hey, God love him. He did show up to help promote it. It was kind of cool because I did get to meet Malcolm McDowell that weekend.
Malcolm's doing the autograph circuit like mad. He's appearing all over the place now.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Now, Brandon, did you have one or?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So the first one is I fed John Waters a vegan hot dog in P-Town during a thunderstorm a few years ago. I interrupted Bill Murray smoking weed behind a dumpster in Austin, Texas. And I got stung by a stingray on a gay nude beach in California while tripping on acid.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's great. Oh, gosh. All of those sound like, yeah. I'm going to say maybe the John Waters one is the lie. David, what do you think?
Oh, I think the tripping with acid's the lie.
Okay.
So the John Waters is the lie.
Okay. That's pretty. I mean, listen, I need some explanation on those two stories because amazing.
Oh, you want them now?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I used to be in a band called Tinsel Teeth, and we played South by Southwest, probably in like 2012. And they do this thing every year. They have a band play out on this gigantic bridge, and as it took us forever to load our equipment out there, we had to walk about probably like a quarter of a mile to get all our shit onto this bridge. And as we're doing this, all these kids were like, "Bill Murray's here! Bill Murray's here!" We're like, what, really? So our friend like brought us over to like this Taco Bell, and behind a dumpster, Bill Murray was like hiding out and smoking weed with these kids. And so then we like said hi to him, shook hands, and then like 15 minutes later, as we just barely finished loading all our equipment onto this bridge, the cops were breaking it up. And then Bill Murray came out and yelled at the cops and told them to settle down. And the cops were getting all mad at him. It was pretty funny. He was like way taller in real life than I thought he was. It was weird.
Oh, nice.
And then the acid story is another tour story. We were traveling through California. We just played a show in San Diego, and we had a boatload of miscellaneous drugs with us. In Arizona, Phoenix the next day, we had a day in between. And if you get caught doing stuff in Phoenix, it's like jail time. So we had a beach day on Black's Beach, and finish off what we have. And so we went down there. There's a lot of naked men jogging, pleasuring themselves, hooking up in the dunes. And to get to Black's Beach, you have to go on this giant cliff. It takes a while to get down there. And we were like tripping hard and playing around in the water. And all of a sudden, I felt this pressure on my foot, and the water started filling up with blood. And got out, and I started crawling on the beach because there was so much blood coming out of my foot. I thought I got bit by something. And our friends were like laughing at us, like, "Oh my God, look how hard he's tripping." And then I got on my back and put my foot up, and this giant naked guy with sunblock just on the tip of his dick came over to us and was telling us about the Stingray Shuffle. What the Stingray Shuffle is, for dumb people like us from the East Coast, this breed of stingray like to sunbathe in the shallow waters, and the sun's right above the water. So if you shuffle your feet around, the vibrations scare them away. But if you're just like stomping around and walking, you're gonna step on them, they're gonna get you. So yeah, that was a pretty unpleasant experience.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Did you have one, David? Or
Oh yeah, all right. 3 stories. One is a lie.
Yep.
I took Christopher Lee to a gay bar. I left Zelda Rubinstein standing at a party and left her there. And I've never played a video game. Which of those 3 statements is a lie?
I'm gonna go with the video game.
I feel like you've told me about Chris Lee in the gay bar, so I'm gonna say the Zelda Rubinstein one is a lie.
No. The lie is the lie is that I've never played a video game.
Okay.
So, but anyway, that was just off the cuff. I had to just think of something.
Yeah, that was good.
How was Christopher Lee at the gay bar? Did the gays recognize him?
I took it. Well, of course, they were 7 feet tall. I took him to Studio One in LA, which was a gay disco. The disco part was not operating that night because they were doing something in the nightclub area. But he still walked through it all, and there are tons of gay guys around. And before I took him, he said to me, "Well, I don't think I'll bring my wife." I said, "Yeah, that might be a good idea." I told him, which I loved it. I said, "Christopher, it's a boys' night out." "Oh, boys' night out. Well." And then he went up to Mendocino County and made a movie called Serial, where he played by day a stockbroker, and by night the leader of a gay leather motorcycle gang. And he called me while he was shooting it. He said, "Well, I found a boy I think you'd like, and I'm going to make him my boyfriend in this." And he sent me a picture of this guy. I said, "Yeah, he's cute." And I just love the fact that I got Christopher to kind of loosen up. And, I mean, look, you work in theater, you work in film. He's worked around gay guys all his life. And so he was fine with it. He was a really great guy. It's just when he got in public, he got a little stuffy because he was, he was uncomfortable. I mean, he was a very interesting, not like Vincent, who was always, open, and, Christopher was very reserved. And, that's kind of why people thought of him as being standoffish or stuffy or full of himself or all of the above,
Yeah, and that's interesting because I know that you knew Vincent very well. So now I believe you told me the story, but just for everybody else, how did you first meet Vincent Price? Like, what was that?
I was in high school, and I lived up in Sacramento, and I was going to Encina High School over on Bell Street, still there. And Vincent came to town. This was like 1968. And he was doing a one-man show called Dear Theo, where he would read letters sent to Vincent van Gogh from his brother Theo, you know, because he was an art historian as well as an actor. So I went down to the Municipal Auditorium downtown Sacramento and met him, went backstage. And it was just the beginning. I couldn't believe it because, you know, I walked up to him and I was writing for our local paper, which was the Encina Tomahawk. Can you imagine? So I walk up to him and I go, "I'm with the Tomahawk." And he said, "Oh my God, the Tomahawk. Well, we better get over here and give you some time." And he was so sweet. And I was such a huge fan. And he gave me his home address, which was very odd. And so I started corresponding with him. And we just continued this kind of relationship until his death, which was very interesting because how many high school kids go up and meet actors they admire, but does it ever lead to other things? With me, I was very lucky. Same thing with Christopher Lee and Barbara Steele, you know, someone that I saw when I was 12 years old. I love telling this because of her age. I was 12, Barbara, 12. I could barely walk. And that my mother had to take me in the theater to see Black Sunday. I just want to rub that in. And you know, who knew? I was 12 years old. I thought, wow, here's this wild woman who's a Madonna on one hand and a monster on the other. And who knew a few years later, maybe a couple of decade and a half, I would be like traveling with her. Who knew? So I had a very lucky kind of experience being a film fan because I made myself available, and I guess fate and destiny did the rest. And by the time I graduated from high school, I went to San Francisco State, and I followed over. What was really the catalyst for me was a guy named Bob Wilkins. Bob Wilkins had a local Sacramento creature features, and he was very popular, and he took a liking to me, and I was a guest on his show several times, and it made me kind of a little celebrity to my high school gang because I was on television, and I was 17. And when Bob moved to San Francisco, I was in college. I just started college. So we both moved over to the Bay Area at the same time. So I started doing his shows at Jack London Square in Oakland when I was a sophomore at San Francisco State. So once again, people at State, not that everybody watched TV back then, everybody was out having a life, you know, but those that did went, "Wow, you were on TV the other night." You know, occasionally I'd get stopped in, you know, Ghirardelli Square by, "Oh, I saw you on the Wilkins show." So, you know, it got to be a habit, and I really was comfortable on camera and I was an actor, so I was a big ham. So at one point, Bob was leaving, and he said, "Do you want to be the guest host? Do you want to host the show?" And I decided I'd rather move to LA. I just knew I wanted to move to LA. I could have stayed in the Bay Area and probably it would have been fine. John Stanley took the job, and he's still up there. He's been doing this his entire life. I don't know if I wanted to do that. You know, I knew if I came down here, I would have a more interesting, and of course it all turned out for the best. And so that's how I really got started. You know, being a monster kid in school, I grew up watching creature features and shock theater, which is how I first saw all the Universal horror movies. And then, of course, I was seeing Hammer films at the drive-in, AIP Poe films at the drive-in. And then by the time I came to LA, you know, I had kind of a real working knowledge of what was to be known as the horror genre. And of course, I'm leaving out going to conventions, which were, you know, still in their embryonic stage. So, and I got to know Forrest Ackerman quite well. And when I moved down to LA, I used Forey as kind of a tool to meet new people. And, you know, I met all the fans. I met everyone through him. And so I was just very lucky that the people that influenced me were kind of legendary figures in the horror genre. If you're going to start at the top, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did you first meet Roger Corman?
Oh my God. When I think he was one of the delivery guys when I was born. I have had Roger Corman in my life forever. I met him for the first time, oh gosh, in the 70s. I came down here and he was doing New World Pictures. I did one of a million interviews, not a million, but I did 4 or 5 interviews with him. And the thing about Roger is he always sounds the same. He always very quietly will tell you how I imagined the movie would be. It always worked out that way. And of course, we had Vincent, who is a professional and very, very easy to, you know, I did 3 interviews with him that you could literally lay on top of each other because the questions never varied. But at one point, you can see this on YouTube. If you want to go on YouTube, I did an evening with Roger at the Arrow Theater in Santa Monica. And we were showing Tales of Terror and Masque of the Red Death. And he came up on stage with me, and it was the only time he was extemporaneous. And I looked at him, and I had this photograph in my hand from the Mr. Valdemar segment of Tales of Terror, where there was a sequence that was cut out, where Vincent goes into the netherworld, where he wakes up and sees what it's like to be in limbo. I see multitudes of people, and Roger cut it. So I'm holding the photograph and I'm looking at Roger, and I went, Roger, what happened to this sequence? And he said, well, we just watched Tales of Terror, so obviously it was in the movie. I said, no, it wasn't in the movie. And he was not, he just didn't, he was not prepared. He was not prepared. So finally, you know, I loved catching him off guard like that. And Clu Gulager was sitting right in the front row looking at him too, which made him uncomfortable. And he finally admitted, well, we must have cut it because it didn't look as good as I wanted. But honestly, if I hadn't had him on the spot there, he would just have, you know, it's just some people have their private and personal lives very put away, you know, and that's fine. But I would just have loved to have known the private Roger Corman, but I don't know if we ever will, you know, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because I know a lot of times, you know, people that have been interviewed so much, they just, you know, they have their pat answers for everything.
Well, he's not interested in being a celebrity, and he's not interested in giving you a lot of information on things that he'd rather, you know, he told me once candidly, he said, if I had realized you guys were going to go over these movies with a fine-tooth comb, I might have made them a little differently. I might not have rushed through them. But you know, he would have, because he's more, you know, look, he's more of a producer than he is a director. And when I say that, you and I know a couple of directors probably in our own lives that have mortgaged their home to make a movie, that have borrowed money from their parents to make a movie. Roger would never do that. Roger never gets high on his own supply. If he makes a movie, it's not out of his pocket. So the budget comes first with him. Other filmmakers are more dedicated to making that movie look as great as it can, regardless of everything else. But Roger is a businessman. And people need to remember that when we go off rhapsodizing about the auteur theory and everything. Because, listen, this guy had the same roof burned in 6 pictures from House of Usher. That guy knew how to. And look, it's no accident that Joe Dante makes a cameo where Roger goes back to the phone booth and tries to fish out the coins.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he's cheap. Christopher Lee is cheap. He's English. The English are cheap. God damn it, they're cheap, and that's the truth, you know. And that's the way they are, and that's what makes them fun in a way. But yeah, I mean, we're gonna really lose Hollywood when we lose Roger, because I can't admit, it's like the Queen. You know, I've never been, ever since I've been alive, Queen Elizabeth has sat on the throne. Same thing with Roger, has been the king of Hollywood ever since I've lived here. So it's going to be very weird. You know, I hope that day never comes, but you know, everybody's getting older, And
No.
I'm stunned at the daily obituaries that I'm putting on Facebook from people. And not people that are not Roger's age. You know, a lot of musicians are dying at 60, 62, 65, 29, you know.
Julie Cruz just died today.
Yeah, I mean, it's just every day, man. You know, I'm always posting something.
Now, you've met so many famous people. Were you ever starstruck by anybody? Was there anybody that was like you were just so over the moon to meet? Or
Well,
really?
when I first met Vincent Price, I was 16 or 17. But when you've lived down here as long as I have, there are very few people that you would be in awe of. I think it would be more like a world figure, you know, if I were to meet. Of course, the current world figures are so awful. You know, I mean, would I want to meet Putin? You know, even a photo op, I don't know if I'd want to. But I always wanted to meet Bela Lugosi, but he died in 1956, so that wasn't going to happen. And I almost met Boris Karloff. When I was in high school, Karloff was still alive. And Bob Wilkins, of all people, came down to LA with Harry Martin, his friend who was the weather guy at KCRA Channel 3 in Sacramento. And they came down to Hollywood, and Karloff was filming an episode of a TV series called The Name of the Game. And Bob said, would you call, I have a friend in Sacramento that loves you. Would you call him up? So I'm sitting there talking to my mom, and the phone rings, and Bob Wilkins is on the line. Says, hey, David, I have a guy on the line that wants to talk to you. And so I go, okay. And I know Bob's one for like practical jokes and stuff. So this guy gets on the line. Hello, this is Boris Karloff. I said, oh, yeah. Where's Bela Lugosi? I believe he's dead. And I went, oh, my God, is it Mr. Karloff? Yes, this is Mr. Karloff. And so that was the one time I really couldn't. It was hard for me. I was just so and I never get tongue-tied. But Boris Karloff calls me on the phone. And I was supposed to go down and spend the afternoon with him while he was filming the Jonathan Winters variety show. And it was just awful. Airfare was like $25 one way from Sacramento to Los Angeles. But that particular weekend, I just had no money. It was just awful. And I felt like shit the whole weekend. And I've never forgotten it. It was the biggest disappointment in my life that I could not have. I had what a dream it would have been to have gone down to CBS and spent the afternoon with Boris Karloff. Jonathan Winters and Agnes Moorehead they also.
Wow.
It would have been incredible. Well, you know, at least I talked to him on the phone. And listen, I've had a very blessed life in terms of being a fan. You know, I've turned it into kind of a way of life, you know, which not everyone can do. And I've lived long enough to see everything come full circle. You know, when I was in college, studying film wasn't something you could get a degree in, truly. And horror films were still very much demonized. They were for children. And in a sense, they are, because all of us that are monster kids kind of have what I call the Peter Pan syndrome. We just don't grow up. We get older, but we don't grow up. Forrest Ackerman was one of the most childlike people I ever met. He was always a child. And in a way, that's good. But at some point, you need to keep the other persona kind of balanced, you know, so you can take care of yourself. But I think that what you see your first 12 or 13 years of your life stays with you forever. So, I mean, the horror movies that we grew up with, they're beyond criticism because you watched them when you were so impressionable that they just forever, you know, the first time I saw Dracula on television, I was just spellbound. I mean, who talks like that? Who looks like that? What? You know? more than Karloff. I've always been a bigger Lugosi fan than a although if he was on the phone, that was pretty awesome. But if someone asked me, who would you rather spend the evening with? And I'd say I'd rather spend it with Lugosi. Because with Lugosi, we'd go to a bar and he would start telling me all kinds of outrageous stories. With Karloff, we'd have tea, he'd pet a dog, he'd be nice to a child. You know, I mean, I don't think I'd get any dirt from Boris Karloff, although I would try to get some. I would take him back to pre-code 30s and see what he had to say. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall while he was shooting Mask of Fu Manchu and that Oriental drag he was.
Oh yeah. Did you see that they just put out the two Mystery of Fu Manchu movies?
Well, the two Warner owns, Mysterious Dr. Fu Manchu and the other one. I wanted, it was funny because both Tim Lucas and I work for Kino Lorber. We do a lot of work for Kino Lorber, two of us. And I get kind of the offbeat movies and he gets different. We all get different movies, but occasionally we both I was doing some pre-code. I did Double Door, which no one had ever seen. It had been just not a lost movie, but you had to really look for it. It wasn't one that was on television all the time. And a couple of others, but Daughter of the Dragon with Anna May Wong still needs to come out. You know, but the Fu Manchus that Warner Oland did, he's Swedish. Isn't it interesting? No one Asian ever plays these characters. Peter Lorre is Mr. Moto. Karloff is Fu Manchu. Warner Oland is Fu Manchu. Warner Oland's from Sweden. You know, Sidney Toller was from Brooklyn. None of these guys. Peter Lorre was from Hungary. You know, these are not Asian guys. But I imagine now there would be something to say about that. But back in the pre-code days, it was a different world. But I'm kind of anxious to see. I have really bad DVD-Rs of those. They're very talky in a way. You know, let Tim Lucas talk about them. You know, for an hour and a half each. You know, you don't realize until you're doing an audio commentary how every minute can be. You know, you're looking at the clock. Oh my God, there's another hour of this thing. You know, and even though you've got it mapped out, it's still like. It's funny though, if there are movies you really love, it's a pleasure. If there are movies that you're doing where and in my case, sometimes movies I'm not familiar with at all, it's like going back to college and doing a term paper, you know, because you have to research it. It's material, it's new to you. But I love it because I'm doing movies of every genre now. I rarely do a horror film now. They're always either film noirs or I've done like 4 Marlene Dietrich movies. I've done a couple of Charles Bronson. I did a Frank Sinatra. I did Ingrid Bergman. I did Cary Grant. I've done everybody, so to speak, you know.
Yeah, I was going to say commentary track wise.
Yeah, well, this is LGBT, SUV, QAY, you know. So, yeah.
Now, Brandon, have you done a commentary yet?
Just for our DVD for Death Drop we did.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Was it like just you, or was it you and like the cast and crew?
It was me and the 2 other co-creators and directors, and then our lead actor Wayne, and then my boyfriend Ryan, who did like majority of the editing and sound and all that kind of stuff too. And the 5 of us just kind of, you know, gave the tips and tricks and secrets of how we made that thing.
Well, David is the master at commentary tracks. He has done all of them.
Well, I did one that Brendan might like called Close Calls. It's an indie film that a friend of mine did. I think he's in Maryland or he's in the Midwest somewhere. And he asked me, he said, I've just done my first movie. Richard, I can't remember his name. But anyway, it's called Close Calls. And it's got a very buxom woman in it, this young lady with huge breasts that I commented on relentlessly because this guy said, my dream is to have a David Del Valle audio commentary. And I said, well, I'm so flattered. If you wanted one, you got it. And so his friend Joe Magna and I went to his girlfriend's apartment and recorded this thing. And it was loads of fun because I said, well, you know, you got all this lighting is very Dario Argento, pink light bulbs, blue light bulbs. That's not always what a giallo is, but I think Americans think these 2 colored light bulbs constitute a giallo. So if you've got pink and blue light bulbs, there you are. You've got Phenomenon. You've got an Argento movie. So anyway, what's so funny, because Joe was like you, he's just, just a regular guy. And so halfway through the commentary, he gets a phone call and he takes on the track. Hi, oh, hi, babe. And I'm going, Joe, we're commentating here. But it was so laid back. I thought, what the hell? I didn't take his call. So if you can ever listen to that, I think it's fun. And the guy loved it. And I'm just for those out, if you want me to do a commentary, it's not that I won't, just ask me. If I have the time, I'd be happy to, because I like to encourage everybody to get out there. Yeah, but it's funny to listen to, because, it's a movie where I didn't have any backstory to it. It was just like this girl with big breasts who actually was kind of fun, because he's in the house alone and someone's stalking her. You get the picture. But, when you've got big breasts and you're being stalked, it's kind of photogenic,
I mean, yeah, that story of my life.
A gay
really.
guy, talking about, everybody's going, wow, David's really into this, which is like.
Well, you got to listen. You got to keep them guessing, right?
Well, I don't think I'm keeping anybody guessing at this point, but that's okay.
Now you've done so many commentary tracks. Do you have a favorite, or do you have a handful of like tracks that you're really like proud of?
Proud of, as opposed to other way. Well, yeah, I mean, the ones I did on the films of Vincent Price. I try and make them entertaining, and I try and bring up little known facts. That's the whole advantage in having someone that knew him do the track. On the other hand, one I'm very proud of is Cecil B. DeMille's The Sign of the Cross, because this was a really important film historically. It was an important film in terms of pre-code. It had incest, homosexuality, apes ogling women tied to, it had it all. Pygmies, decapitating. It was, because DeMille was a pervert. It was a very perverse man. He was not religious whatsoever. He pretended to be. He was a hypocrite. And so for me, I really had to give it the best shot, as academic and as accurately as I could, not realizing that there was another track. See, they don't always tell you there's 2 tracks on a disc. So you have 2 people talking about the same movie. What's up with that? And so the other fellow had written 2 books on DeMille. So I had my work cut out for me. And I'm very happy to say that my reviews were just as good, if not better, than his. And yeah, I knew him. We were old friends that had a falling out. So this was like, how weird. First of all, I'm doing a commentary, and when I recorded it, I didn't know the other guy was also going to be on the track, not to mention that we weren't speaking. So blah, blah, blah. So it must have really caused him a minor heart attack to get his copy and see my little name above his there. Ha, 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 ha. I love that kind of stuff,
Now,
yeah, I mean, I really try and do my best on all of them. And sometimes I do them with other people. Sometimes I do them alone. I love the one I did with the late Maria Rome for Count Dracula, for Severon, because Maria was a recluse. She never left her apartment in where was she? She lived in Toronto, not Toronto. Anyway, she was up in Canada, and she would never leave her apartment because she'd gotten fat. And she'd been a very beautiful woman, as you know, from Maria Rome, Venus in Furs, all of the Jess Franco movies and stuff. And so she would only talk to me. So David Gregory got us on what we're doing right now on Zoom. And even then, she put a picture of herself when she was young in front of the thing. Even though I talked to her every day, because we were friends beyond that on the phone. And I said, if I come to Canada, can I just meet you in the lobby? She says, no, darling. I just remember me the way. And, that was her decision. And I don't think anyone except her housekeeper ever really saw her. And I guess that's the tragedy, men and women that are vain, that, you know, and I encountered this when I was doing movie conventions with actors and directors where, you know, there are their pictures laid out in front when they were young. And, you know, people are kind of tactless when they come up. Is this you? What happened? It's called age, you know. I mean, they forget, you know, they got their own families. They see their parents age. Why is it so hard to believe that someone you saw in a movie in 1960 doesn't look like that anymore? Of course, if you're talking about Cher, Cher has looked, okay, I know how old I am and I know how old she is, and she looks exactly like she did my sophomore year in high school. Is she a vampire? What? She looks the same. Madonna, not so much. Madonna needs to calm down. I love Madonna, honey, but she needs to calm down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, what accent is she on now? Anyway.
Well, I don't know. I just think she's gonna look like a Goodyear tire if she's not careful. And somebody's gonna just roll her off the stage, babe, you know. But let us not forget, and even in humor, that Madonna has been a staunch supporter of gay rights.
Yeah.
So I have nothing but respect for her. And it's out of love that I say, calm down. Out of love, I say this.
Now, would you say that like the community of like film historians that you're a part of, do you feel like it's pretty close knit? Do you guys contact each other from time to time?
No, not at all. I mean, I'm friends with Tim Lucas. I'm friends with a number of others, but well, I noticed Tim now is, you know, is a what is it? Author critic. He won't. Some of us are removing the film historian moniker because too many people are using it. Tim's already done it, and I've already told him over at Kino. Well, I'm an author, so I mean, I think one has, and Tim's right to do this if you have the background for it. And Tim and I started, you know, around the same time. I started helping him with articles and interviews with number 8 of Video Watchdog. So yeah, I mean, just to call yourself a film historian pretty much puts you just in a pool of everybody's a film historian. And maybe some of them are, but when I first started, you either did a commentary with someone that was in the movie. The first commentary I ever did was for William Lustig, Blue Underground. And Bill's a great guy. He's the first. I did Daughters of Darkness with John Carlin, who played Willie Loomis in the Dark Shadows series.
Oh, nice.
And John, I wouldn't have done it without John because we had to have someone that was connected to the movie, right? Then I didn't do another commentary for a long time, and I've forgotten I did then started doing them. And I believe that, you know, if you've written books, if you've written articles, if you've opened the door for scholarship so that you can truly call yourself a film historian, then that's what you are. But as the companies get more and more titles, you've got hundreds of titles and all the boutique labels want commentary for them. And so there's not, you know, I can't do all of them. Tim and I can't do them all. So other people have to do them. And a lot of people are doing more than others. I've certainly done my share. There are people that do far more than I do and now there are video essays, which I would love to start doing because I believe you can wrap up a movie in 25 minutes talking like I am now, which I'm very good at, as you've noticed. And I don't think that would be, I think that might be a more interesting way to go than talk through an entire movie. Talking through an entire movie is very difficult. And I just did The Raven for Kino Lorber. And I did that in one take because I knew the film so well with just an outline. I don't really use a script. Tim scripts his, I kind of use an outline and try and I want mine to be entertaining. I want them in a way to be like, I'm sitting in a room with you, Mike, and we're watching a movie together and we're talking through it because we've seen it a million times. And that's what makes it fun. There are some movies that I don't want to watch by myself, and I'm sure you're that way too, especially comedies. Comedies need an audience.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I mean, there's no set way to do a commentary. I've just started listening to other people's, which I never used to do. And I realized that there are just many, many ways to do this. And I'm not saying one is better than the others. It depends on what engages you. If you're engaged by my kind of extemporaneous kind of banter, fine. If you want something more academic, then there are people out there that do that. And I have to say, I believe there are some movies that probably shouldn't have a commentary. Because, you know, I mean, I did one called Satan's Cheerleaders. And some reviewer said, well, he didn't do a very big deep dive into that. And I'm going, deep dive into fucking Satan's Cheerleaders? Are you really? Okay. But, you know, hey, when you put your name out there like I do, you have to be prepared for criticism.
Yeah.
And occasionally the user reviews are the worst because they just say whatever they may be angry you're doing it because they'd rather do it, you know, so there's jealousy involved there in a way. So who's to say? But for the most part, I've been very lucky. I've gotten pretty nice reviews down the line from everybody. And I wouldn't keep getting employed if I was doing something that people didn't like. But as I said before, you cannot please everybody. And I get some comments about, because as you say, I knew a lot of these people. When I say I knew them, it wasn't like somebody that you interview for half an hour at a convention and then you go away saying he's my best friend. I don't do that. And you know I don't do that. Yeah. But I do mention so-and-so, and somebody says, oh, well, he's name dropping. Well, not really. You know, if I'm name dropping, I have the right to do that, you see. Yeah. I've earned the right to do that. And as one of the older commentators out there, you know, give me some respect. Fucking motherfuckers, you know.
Yeah, I know I've said this in my reviews of your commentary tracks.
Well, you've always been such a supporter of mine, you know.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan. I have in my notes here that you are going to be doing. You have a track coming out for Matahari, right?
Yes, it's Curtis Harrington's his final feature, and I'm doing it with Nate Bell. Nate Bell's running the, I guess, the Curtis Harrington site up on Facebook, and he's a professor of film, and he has done like one of his papers on Curtis, and he approached me many years ago because he had read some of my interviews with Curtis. And when I met him, I said, you know what? Why you want to do I'm starting to do the Curtis Harrington movies. You want to do them with me? So we've done so far Whoever Slew Auntie Rue, Ruby, and Matahari. We've done 3. And if we can find games, we'll do that one, and maybe some of the TV movies. But so far so Matahari was the very last. But I realized when I was doing the track that people that buy this are not buying it for Curtis. They're buying it for Sylvia Crystal. So I decided, and a good friend of mine, my friend Jeremy, has just done a coffee table book on Sylvia Crystal that's gorgeous, but it only goes up to 1983, and Matahari's 1985. So there's nothing in his book about the movie. And the movie, here was my problem with it. Sylvia had been addicted to drugs and alcohol since she was 11 years old. She's had a horrendous life, and she's gone. And a lot of the problems in the movie is the fact that she literally was she was distracted beyond. Curtis could not get a performance out of her. And I was faced with, do I want to throw a lot of shade on Sylvia and just praise Curtis, or do I want to be more level-headed about it? And so I decided to be nice about Sylvia Crystal, because come on, man, we've all had our problems with addictions and things, as I have. And when I heard that she had been an addict since she was 11, man, this woman never had a chance. And she was beautiful. Emmanuel made jillions of dollars. And I took her persona from that. So hopefully the fans of Sylvia and the fans of Curtis will appreciate what I did, because it's not an easy movie to get through. You won't find a good review of it anywhere. Everyone thought it was terrible. But when you're faced with that, you have to make a decision. I mean, no one wants to hear me go on for an hour and 80 minutes, you know, it's nearly a 90-minute movie about what's wrong with it, you know. So I tried to explain how Curtis was sabotaged by an evil director of photography who had no real credentials and kept calling Menachem in LA saying, you should fire Curtis, you should fire him. He's incompetent, which is ridiculous. And so Curtis had his hands full. It's a miracle the movie got made at all. So I'm hoping that the commentary will elevate one's appreciation of what's there. I mean, sadly, that's Curtis's last movie. He didn't get an opportunity to do any. You know, Tobe Hooper got three picture deal with Canon. Curtis should have gotten one as well. But there you are. Not that Toby did any better with what he had, because it didn't save his career either, but there you are.
Yeah, but it's really interesting because I love a lot of the movies that you cover is stuff that is maybe a little more obscure, and it's kind of fun to discover those, like Connecting Rooms, which was it Betty Davis film?
Connecting Rooms. Listen, I got halfway through Connecting Rooms and the board operator says, David, you don't like Betty Davis very much, do you? And I said, dude, I love Betty Davis. And he goes, well, it doesn't sound like it here, man. And I was exactly halfway through it. And I thought, I had just read this whole thing of Patrick O'Neill's experiences with Betty Davis being on Broadway in Night of the Iguana, where Betty was just a total bitch and everyone hated her. And I'm more Team Crawford, Team Joan than Team Betty. So I was just giving Betty Davis what for, you know, because she was always criticizing Joan for like wanting to sleep with her leading men or sleeping with it. Well, she did the same thing. In fact, in Connecting Rooms, she tried to have Alex Karras fired because he wouldn't sleep with her. Mm. They're a little tidbit for the middle of a commentary, don't you think? And so, you know, I was like, and so I kind of calmed down a little. So we'll see. I mean, I haven't listened to it. You've listened to it. So did I sound like I hated Betty Davis? Or?
I didn't think so.
Good. Because I don't hate Betty Davis. I don't, truly. A little angry here and there.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I mean, it's probably a movie that I wouldn't have maybe, I mean, I probably would have maybe checked it out because of Betty Davis, but it's not something that I probably would have like deep dived unless you would have done the track for.
Well, you know, no one knew that movie. In fact, when I went to the Margaret Herrick looking for material on it, and Betty Davis never mentioned it in her memoirs, nor did Michael Redgrave. Isn't that interesting? So neither one of them really wanted to. It was like when I did The Fan with Lauren Bacall. James Garner's biography didn't mention The Fan. Lauren Bacall barely mentioned it. So once in a while you get movies like The Fan or Connecting Rooms where you have a big star who had a problem on the movie and just disregarded it. And you know, I mean, in the Crawford Davis thing, I don't really think they were enemies. I think that a lot of it was prepared because they realized that we're still talking about them 30 years after they're dead. What a brilliant thing. You know, I need to pick a feud. It won't be hard. I need to pick a feud with somebody for my longevity. So 40 years from now, like, you know, those two never got along. You know, they were always at each other, which is, you know, I get along with everybody if I want to. You know? But Connecting Rooms was like, I could find very little on it. And then when I found material on it, once again, it was like Patrick O'Neill or Alex Karras, you know, the young man in it, saying, I don't know what happened. She was nice to me one minute, and then she kind of came on to me, and I went late. And the next thing I knew, we were not speaking. And the next thing I knew, that she wanted me off the set, you know. And I don't think Crawford ever went that far as Betty Davis did. But when these women got older, it just became so hard to age. I think that's really what Baby Jane is all about, is the terror of getting older. The scene where Betty Davis is like pretending to be Baby Jane and there's a mirror there and she goes, because I'm much too young to know. And all of a sudden she lets out this incredible shriek that Crawford hears upstairs. It's a brilliant moment in Robert Aldrich's movie. And that's why those two ladies should have won the Oscar for that. I mean, Anne Bancroft, no one even watches The Miracle Worker anymore. No one gives a shit about The Miracle Worker. It's histrionics, but look what we're talking about. See, that's the problem with the Oscars. They give them to things, you know, the year that Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz came out, they gave it to How Green Was My Valley, which no one I don't watch it. No one watches it. No one cares about How Green Was Your Valley. It's John Ford's least talked about movie. And it's just like, so forget the Academy Awards. It's what people love that matters. And the awards now, I don't even watch them anymore.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Bette Davis, what did you think of her Hammer movies that she made?
Well, Hammer Time with Bette Davis. Well, I think the Nanny is a very accomplished. Yeah. I think it's one of her best performances. One thing I will say about Bette Davis, she did not hesitate to look unglamorous. She, after all, put on the clown makeup to be Baby Jane. She did a catered affair where she wore no makeup. And in The Nanny, she really gives probably one of her best performances. However, the next one, The Anniversary, she just went balls to the wall crazy. And as a result, it's kind of a misfire. I mean, it's worth it to hear her sing Rock of Ages. Glad to me, you know, that's kind of funny. But so, yeah, I mean, I prefer Tallulah Bankhead in Die, Die, My Darling. Now, that's a good one. Have we lost you, Mike? You seem to be frozen in time. Hey, Brandon, I think we've lost Mike.
I think we did too.
You just look like the last thing I said kind of got him. Says, you are the host now. You are the captain now. We taking over the ship. I feel like, what was that movie with Tom Hanks where oh, there you are. You're back.
Yes. My internet cut out. Sorry.
That's okay. Did you hear what all we talked about? Yeah.
No, I didn't catch that.
You didn't?
No.
You did, Brandon, right?
Oh, yeah, I got it.
Well, good. So what do we want to talk about now? Who do we want?
Yeah, I was going to say, who can we dish on now?
Why not?
Yeah. David, you should definitely check out Brandon's movie. Just a little shameless plug for...
well, check out that Close Calls, man. You'll see, you know, it'll probably ring a couple of bells. But as we said, I did Mata Hari, and I'm about to do something, another film noir, but I will wait until I've done it to talk about it. But I just got that the other day. And I've got Terror Out of the Skies coming, which is a TV movie about bees.
Oh, that's from Kino, right?
Yeah, it's a sequel to The Savage Bees. There's 2 bee movies. And
bee movies, right?
Bee movie in every way. Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. is in this with Dan Haggerty, and they're both after a girl that's half their age. So in Ephraim Zimbalist's part, like, he's 60. What are you thinking, man? She's 25. Oh, well, you couldn't do that now, could you?
So David, what are some like recent movies that you've really been enjoying?
Really? What movies have I been? Well, you know, I have any look. I'm going to tell you something about the movies that have been out during the pandemic. Everything that says 2020 or 2021 has been really disappointing for the most part, because they were made, you know, the last movie I saw in a theater was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which was one of the last great movies done in Hollywood. The last movie I saw just pre-pandemic was The Hunt, which was not terribly good. And just before that, I'd seen The Lighthouse, which I liked. I thought The Witch was a great movie. I thought The Witch kind of harkened back to the days of Val Lewton.
Yeah.
In a way. But of the current, I haven't seen Man yet. But I have a feeling, and I haven't seen the new Cronenberg. But, you know, I just feel like everyone that was established, all the old directors, Paul Schrader, you know, David Cronenberg, they're all kind of still doing good work, but it's not like their best work.
I saw Comedy.
And I don't know that they can ever go back to their best work. And a lot of us are being very generous and kind in reviewing these new movies. Not everyone, you know, I mean, for me, the fact that some of these guys are still working is wonderful, you know, and Martin Scorsese has a new movie coming out, but you know, it's not going to be Raging Bull. It's not going to be Goodfellas. It's going to be the new Scorsese, whatever that is. So I don't know. I mean, I saw House of Gucci, which I thought was amusing. I didn't really see a great Gaga performance in that, in a way. I'm glad I didn't have to comment on it. So I thought the best one in it, of course, Al Pacino's fun, whatever. I just saw, before the pandemic, Al played Tennessee Williams at the Pasadena Playhouse with Judith Light and Brett Corrigan. Oh, no, not Brett Corrigan. That's it. Which one of those porn actors was it? It's the one that started out at Disney, Garrett Clayton. You know who I mean?
No.
No, it's a bunch of gay show. What the hell, guys? Name your porn stars. Let's get going here. Your favorite Falcon video. Let's do that. Let's get the show on the road. But no, anyway, Al Pacino was not any more like Tennessee Williams than I would be, or you for that matter. But he was Al Pacino and it was entertaining. But never once did I thought he was playing a character. And I'm using that as an example for really established actors sometimes just coast by on that now.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, there was like that, like what was that, Christopher Walken doing that Peter Pan Live?
One of the truly worst performances I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Lon Chaney Jr. doing the dress rehearsal for Tales of Frankenstein, where he didn't know it was live. And he picks up a chair and instead of breaking, he sits it back down. Walken did not act like he was filming. Because the musical numbers, he just stood there. It was awful, you know, I mean, but he's capable of great things. You know, everybody stumbles now and then, but that seems to be what you remember more than their better things. But Christopher Walken's an icon, you know. So
yeah.
Pretty much
I mean,
what he wants.
Oh yeah, I think when you're at a certain point, you can pretty much do anything, and you're good.
Yeah, well, we're living in that world, you know, and it's just. But as far as movies go, I think this is why we're all clinging to the past. You know, I mean, that's why I'm constantly employed to talk about pre-code movies of the 50s and 60s. You know, even the 80s. My God, the 80s. The 90s, I don't remember. So I'm sure something really fun happened in the 90s, but whatever. But, you know, it's like everyone is like their 4K transfers of 80s slasher films over and over and over and over. I will say this, but, you know, not to sound like the old man shaking his fist at clouds. But dudes, this franchise shit has got to stop. I remember when a franchise was Burger King. And now it's like thousands. These Halloween movies are awful. They're awful. Don't waste your money. And, you know, anything that's Scream 7. Nerve Campbell was at this convention last weekend telling people she's not in Part 8. Who the fuck cares? You know, these are not movies that should have I mean, why? If you know, for example, if you know you can't kill the protagonist, why do we keep watching? These movies are brainless and pointless. I'm sorry, you know, but they make money. Like, look at John Carpenter's interview over for Charlie Band. He's just talking about, bring me my check, bring my money. Where's my money? You know, he's older than dirt and he wants money. And you know what? He's outlived everyone that was worried about his health.
Yeah.
Isn't that hilarious? John Carpenter looks like a corpse and he's still alive, smoking, playing music. Good for him. But all these, I remember George Miller going, oh, poor John, you know, look who's, you know, it's like, oh God, it's like I met this, he was really awful. Kurt Siodmak. I met him when he was nearly 100. Just one of the most awful men you can imagine. full of vinegar, this old dude. And we were talking about Lon Chaney Jr. And he goes, Lon Chaney Jr. is dead. I'm alive. Who's winning? Who's winning? And I'm like, well, you old coot, I think he's better off dead. Look at you, you know, but who's winning? That was his attitude. And he hated his brother, Robert, who was a great director. And, you know, Kurt Siodmak, you know, sometimes you were asking me about meeting people. Sometimes you meet them and they're very disappointed. You know, I would rather have not known the author of The Wolf Man was, you know, such a crotchety old man, you know.
So now, do you think that there's any good modern filmmakers? Is there any filmmakers that you really like currently working?
Well, yeah, I can't really think of any to mention. You know, Del Toro, I liked somewhat. I liked Del Toro better when he was in Spain and broke. You know, when he came here and became a millionaire, it's all a little much. It's like someone with a train set that knows how to put it all together and it looks beautiful, but it's kind of empty because he's all about set decor and atmosphere and not so much on narrative. I think maybe that's the problem. If you don't have a good script, you don't have a good movie. There are very few filmmakers that are like Salvador Dali or Kenneth Anger or you know, people making art films or movies that have no narrative, that are visual works. You know, Into the Void, I thought was an accomplished movie for what it is. But I guess, you know, partially because of the pandemic, I haven't really been in a theater to see anything. I mean, what's out there to see now? Top Gun Maverick, you know, which I do want to see, but that's one I want to see in a theater. I want to see Elvis. I think I love his movies. They're not for everybody. I think since Ken Russell is gone, Baz is pretty much the forerunner of Baroque over the top.
Yeah.
Musical kind of like Moulin Rouge. I thought Moulin Rouge was wonderful. I'm really looking forward to Elvis. Who do you think, Mike, is like, if you were going to suggest a filmmaker to me that I would like from that?
I really like Peter Strickland is a really good one that I've been enjoying. Ben Wheatley, his stuff's always pretty weird and pretty interesting. Brandon, how about you? What modern filmmakers are you digging right now?
It's been a struggle. A lot of the modern filmmakers I was enjoying, I haven't liked the recent stuff. I preferred it, like you had mentioned before, when they have less of a budget. Creative. I think everything is so overly stylized, and there's not good scripts. There's not intelligent stories. It's just, I feel like a lot of movies spoon feed the audience now, and it's just redundant. I think the A24 trend has really just put a damper on horror. I really do. I'm hoping this whole, like, I keep hearing the terms neo horror and elevated horror. It's just so pretentious and stupid. I'm just tired of it. I'm all for slow burns. I'm all for, like, you know, weird horror with weird allegories, and you have to do a little bit of research when the movie is finished. But I think a lot of these directors now are kind of using that as a crux to not have everything fit into a neat package, and it's kind of distracting. So I'm kind of hoping these trends pull their head out of their own asses. I've been disappointed with a lot of filmmakers recently. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think getting handed too much money, and I think also just the new trends in horror right now just really aren't for me. It's just like beautiful set pieces, lots of money, beautiful scoring, like eye candy with no content, or it's these people relying on these franchises that are just being beaten to death. I mean, these franchises succeeded at a time period when, you know, they're in that microcosm of that decade. The technology kind of fit what's happening, and now they're trying to bring it into a modern world where we have cell phones. You're trying to rehash Halloween, where it's like you expect like people to not have cell phones on them. You don't think the military or like the National Guard's going to come find this guy that just killed 12 firefighters in the beginning of the film. Like, it's just kind of silly to me. So I think like these movies have to work within their means of modern technology, and it just looks silly now. It's like we got to kind of like be more dynamic and kind of see how we can fit these new ideas of horror, how they fit into our technology to make these films make sense. Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, Friday the 13th would not have succeeded if we had cell phones. And they're trying to make these things work now in a modern day, and it's just getting really silly and redundant. So I'm hoping we can kind of start getting creative on like kind of working with what we have and getting a little, kind of working within these means and making better scripts. I'm at a loss right now. I think the last great movie I saw was David Cronenberg's son, Brandon Cronenberg. I loved Possessor. I'm really curious to see what he does. Antiviral was incredible. So I'm hoping like whatever he does next, I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah, that I think that sums it up really well.
I saw X the other day, speaking of brand new movies, and talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Have you watched X yet?
I did.
Okay, well, now here's my take on it. I was really intrigued with it and stayed with it till the bitter end. But guys, it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of veiled around the premise of a porn crew going out in the same sticks of Texas that the chainsaw movies are. And here's what they did. They took the old couple, the old man in the wheelchair that's in Texas Chainsaw, the Tobe Hooper original, with his wife. And they've made them the characters in this new movie. It's a Texas Chainsaw movie. And they actually owe the people, if there's anyone to owe at this point, it's not an original idea at all. And I found it, it didn't gross me out, but come on. Two elderly skeleton-like figures fucking in a bed where you get it's like porn for the Crypt Keeper. And who is, if they thought that was gender bending, if they thought that was transgressive, it's just poor. It's just, once again, people that don't think very hard into what they're doing. It's not great filmmaking at all. And, enough of it. But yet the reviews for this thing astonished me, because either people are, they're being paid to say these things, or they've reached a point where their critical assessments of things are all within the last 20 years. No one realizes this has all been done before. And you're absolutely right. If we don't start, look, there's a wealth of information, there's a wealth of short stories and novels that are public domain in the horror genre and supernatural fiction. It's all there. You can go back and update it, keep it as it is. And you have I think the problem with young filmmakers is they try and write their own scripts. Don't do that. Stop. Because chances are you can't write. Or if you do, you're going to write something banal, Adapt your story. Your story has to hang on something concrete. So get that story strong and true. Then everything else will fall in around it. And, we're in an era now where there are no movie stars anymore. So Colin Farrell's name above a title is not going to get you money. So you can forget about that. Bruce Willis, up until he finally said, look, I'm very ill, leave me alone. They would put him in a movie for 5 minutes. Guys, these aren't going to bring tickets back to you. There's no more movie stars. The only way a movie star exists is through the Marvel universe. And they can replace those in a heartbeat.
Yeah, it's sad. It's a weird state of affairs right now. Like, I was trying to think about what movies I'm excited about this year, and it's a short list, and I don't know. It's kind of a bummer. Like every year I try to do my top 10 movies of the year. In the last 3 years, it's been a struggle. It just really has. And I'm not pretentious. I go into everything with an open mind, but I just been really disappointed. And I think it's like you said too. I think a lot of it is people missing the mark. If you're not a good writer, then what, in these little subgenres of horror, there's definitely a checklist of what keeps them, what retains rewatchability. Like if you're making a slasher, if you're doing off-screen kills, it's not people are there for the gore. If you're doing or a folk horror, you gotta have good tension and a build up and a smart script to keep that afloat. You can't do that, it's going to be a dud. It's just, I don't know, it's tricky, but I think people are just so concerned with stylization right now that they're missing the forest for the trees, and stylization can only go so far. Like you said, there's not a whole lot of Kenneth Anger, Jodorowsky kind of directors these days. So it's if you're going to make a visual pleasing, surreal abstract film, then you got to kind of go in head first. We don't really have, and I think everyone's trying to do that, but combining it with a linear storyline that's not making sense, and it just gets messy.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious, have either one of you seen Knife Plus Heart?
Yeah, you mean the so-called Argento homage?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't like it at all. And,
Okay.
you know, my friend Sam Jaffe is with Strand Releasing, and he's
Mm.
responsible for it. And he's such a sweet guy. And when the movie was being premiered here, he said, David, you've got to come for the first night. You're going to love it. And I took a friend of mine he and I kind of similar tastes, and he like fronts a band. And so he's a young guy and knows what's up. And we got like 30 minutes into it, and it was just, you know, the problem with it is there was no narrative. There's no story. I haven't seen Last Night in Soho, which I understand goes kind of in a similar direction.
Yeah,
What did you think of it, Mike? Did you like it?
I really liked it. I totally agree narratively, and I'm using that very loosely. There's not a lot. I liked it just because it was so it kind of reminded me of like a Derek Jarman film, like something like that, kind of spliced with Argento a little bit.
Well, yeah, it was certainly it was a gay film, that's for sure. But hey, but you know, we got to be honest here. Argento's not much on narrative either. I mean, if you're going to emulate Giallo's, maybe not having a narrative. I don't think we can play the narrative card so much. What my problem was with that was it was just dull to me. I've seen other films at Outfest that also had pink and blue light bulbs in them that I liked a lot better. I mean, honestly, bring your light bulbs to this thing, and you'll find, you know, actually, guys, we should just make a wannabe Argento movie with pink and blue light bulbs and pretty boys and a good. Your soundtrack will get you halfway there. And you know, I think we could fudge a movie, don't you? I mean, since that's what people are doing, I'm certainly shameless about that. Brandon, we should make one of these. We can just call it, I don't know, Mother of Fears or something, and like Foriak, Mother of Fears. You know, Mother of Tears doesn't look so bad now. You know, I looked at it a few weeks ago and I thought, Christ, it's not as bad as what's out there now. You know, maybe we should reassess that for a change. Udo is in that too, by the way.
Yeah, like compared to what was that, his like Dracula film, Dracula 3D.
Well, you know, he was hired to do that. What are you going to do? I thought a praying mantis, Dracula turns into a praying mantis. Why not? You know, why not? Who cares?
Yeah.
We watched Mother recently too. I enjoyed it. I think like I like when movies dive into like folklorish mythology realms, and I think like I like the folklore mythology that Argento created with the three mothers, and the Mother of Tears is pretty fun. It's it has its moments of like tongue-in-cheek corniness, but I enjoy it. It's stupid. When that lady throws her baby off the bridge, I laugh every time.
You know, I think they're fun.
Oh, I love those.
Those are really fun, you know. I mean, if you're gonna make a movie, make one like that.
I agree. Those first two are incredible. They're so fun.
Fun, yeah. And the soundtrack is what fuels them on, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think, like it's not obviously horror or a gay. Well, it kind of has gay themes, and that's Mitchell and the Machines. Have you guys seen that one?
No, I haven't. No.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good movie.
Well, that's probably why I haven't seen it.
There you go. Well, it's nice because there is, like, it turns out to be a queer character that they kind of hint at and then reveal at the end, which I think is pretty cool. But it's really fun. Mitchell versus the Machines. I think it's on Netflix.
Oh, well, I'll watch it. I get Netflix.
But yeah, I'm trying to think, like, yeah, it's kind of a sad state of affairs. I mean, there have been a handful of like recent little indie films that I've really liked. Everything Everywhere All at Once, if I'm getting that in the correct order. That was amazing. Have you all seen that?
No, that one I want to see. I've heard about it.
Yeah.
But, you know, I just haven't gone into theaters yet. I depend pretty much on what I can stream or watch on cable, which the best stuff I've seen has been mainly cable shows. you know, whether what was that reboot of Salem's Lot that was
Oh yeah, when
I've forgotten the name of it already, but it was pretty good. And you know, I think Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, I think those are terrific shows that are beautifully put together. There's certainly more on cable than there is in feature films right now.
So I pulled up my list of my favorite films from last year, and it's kind of a shame because it seems like not a lot of these really get talked about a lot. Like Martyr's Lane was really fantastic. Elijah Wood did a movie called No Man of God. Have you all seen that one?
No,
Heard of that?
I saw the one with the daddy movie. Did he do like Don't Tell Daddy or something like that?
I'm not sure about that one.
Elijah Wood did one where he's go back to see his father.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Come to Daddy.
Call Me Dad, something like that. That's a horror film, which kind of had an interesting.
I think Call Me Daddy is a whole other movie that I may or may not be watching currently.
Oh, so I'm missing two other filmmakers I definitely would watch out for. The McAdams family. They did Hellbender. And it's a family that lives up in northern New York, and they're like the nicest people. And they've been making their own movies out of their house. And I really enjoyed Hellbender a lot. It's very Chris Bickle down in South Carolina just did a movie called Bad Girls last year too, which is like a road movie. It's just super campy, gory, drug fueled mayhem. It's great. But those are two filmmakers I'm keeping an eye out for too.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you mentioned Hellbender, because that's really fantastic. I got to review that at Fantasia Fest. And David, do you have Shudder, that streaming service?
No, I don't have Shudder at the moment, but I was going to do actually the queer Shudder series when Film Noble at Fangoria. I did I don't even know if it wound up on Shudder. They got a hold of me just before they finished, and I talked a little bit about some, believe it or not, franchise movies, because that's what he wanted to talk about. It was so weird. Like he was, let's talk about Freddy, and I'm going, okay. And but that was for the Shudder last of their horror series. Then I was supposed to do the queer horror thing, and I never got called back. And then I understand it's out now, and I don't think I'm in it. But if I had gotten something on Shudder, but I don't have Shudder, but should I get Shudder? Is it worth having?
So it sounds like this is sponsored by it, but it's not. I really like it. Every Friday they do the Joe Bob Briggs. I really like that. They have a really great selection. They have a whole curated list of like queer horror films and genre films, which is pretty cool. And Brandon, your film's on there, so
yeah, there you go.
And
I love Shudder.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I really, Brandon, I was telling you earlier, but like, I really enjoy your film. I think everybody needs to check it out.
Well, I'm gonna watch it, Brandon. I'll watch your movie.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's campy as fuck. It's John Waters-ish, like just campy gore drag queen slasher.
A little bit of a meat grinder situation.
Now, my friend Michael Varrati just had a movie screening of the thing he did with Peaches Christ. Have you seen that? Called All About Evil? Or
I haven't seen it, but I heard about it.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but you know,
the older one that she made,
that was mad a while ago, and now it's on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I saw it.
Nice. How was it?
It's awesome.
Good. Well,
Michael and Peaches are great too.
I think I really wish someone would make a really good gay horror movie that, you know, where the characters just happen to be gay and there's very little fuss made about it. It's all what happens to them and how, you know. I haven't seen one of those yet.
Yeah. Well, I will say, so it's a semi-recent film called The Ranger, and it has a really great, just kind of incidental gay couple. And
I
like,
saw a trailer for that, by the way, the Ranger. So it looked interesting.
yeah, that's a good one. I'm so awful. I'm blanking on who directed it. I think it's female directed too, which I love. But yeah, they do have two gay characters, and they very nonchalantly mention that they're together. But again, it's just like they're incidentally another couple, which I think is pretty awesome. Yeah, but you're right. It's like, other than that, I'm trying to think of another really good example of that.
One movie I will say that does that really well, and I didn't really like it because it's more for teenagers, but I thought the Fear Street movies, they don't really make a big deal out of the main character is a lesbian, and it's the first time you see a lesbian in a film where she's not bisexual and like making out with guys. It was like, and it was kind of like it wasn't the main focus of the story. The main focus of the story was the actual plot of like the creatures and the supernatural stuff going on, and she just happened to be a lesbian. I thought they did a great job with that. Not for me, but like if I was like 15, I'd fucking love it. And I think they did a really good job. It's a colorful, fun trilogy. It is what it is. But I think they did a good job with that.
Well, what do you guys think of the Ryan Murphy American Horror Stories series, which is kind of hit and miss? Did you quit following? I mean, it's supposed to be.
Brandon, do you want to take this first, or?
Less is more.
Well, they've done so many. I quit watching them, honestly.
They're just like, so we were filming our last movie we were filming, we started filming in Provincetown. And like we were there like 2 weeks before they got there, and so we were curious to see like this Provincetown American Horror Story. It's just literally just eye candy. The plot, the dialogue, it's so laughable. I don't know how people take him serious. Like I'm wondering if he's laughing behind the scenes at this stuff because it's so bad. I don't know.
Well, what do you do when you've got an executive producer like Ryan Murphy, who's openly gay, flamboyant in many ways, the way he dresses and everything? This is how he's presenting himself in the LGBT world, and his stories are exactly. I saw Ratchet the other day, all set design, all decor, like Joel Schumacher, but not as good. And the last time I liked Ryan Murphy was when he did the one with Freak Show, mainly because there was some amazing moments in that with Matt Bomer, who's gorgeous, where he's murdered by this other gorgeous guy, Flynn Whitlock. That you're right. He has really attractive guys, really interesting sets, the things with the witches in New Orleans, but he always overdoes it to where the things that you admire, you kind of wonder where they went. It's like you're at a birthday party where there's no food, just cake and ice cream, until you actually get hungry and all there is cake and ice cream.
Yeah. That's actually such a great way to put it.
I wanted Hollywood, the thing where he reinvented things like, he tried to do what Quentin did with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and making Rock Hudson has a black lover or something he would never have had, not because he was racist, just because that just didn't happen or wouldn't have happened. Anna Mae Wong wins an Oscar, the Hollywood, everybody, and he took the Scotty Bauer full service book and didn't pay Scotty and just used a lot of the stuff with the drive, with the gas station where you could go to Dreamland, all that stuff. But yet did it really help us understand anything about Hollywood, or did it just reinforce stereotypes about the casting couch? I knew Henry Wilson, so when I saw how he was depicted in that, I thought you get a screaming Nellie Queen to play. Henry was not that way. Henry was very subdued as far as being. He couldn't have done the studio system if he'd acted like that. Yeah. And not that, I suppose you can take creative license only so far, but it's unfortunate when you're dealing with people that really lived. I think that's the big problem with people either liking or not liking the new Elvis, is we have Elvis. Elvis has never died. We can watch endless documentaries, endless clips of him in candid, formal, singing, not singing, going in the army. How can you compete with the real Elvis, with an Elvis impersonator? But Austin Butler's a good-looking guy, and he's charismatic, and if it's going to be like a phantasmagoria thing like Ken Russell, that's fine. But, it's just like the horror genre doesn't need to be too over the top, because you're already kind of over the top, unless you're doing something based on one of the great ghost story writers in my estimation is M.R. James. And I always go back to Curse of the Demon, Night of the Demon, as one of the best of the 50s horror films for atmosphere, script, direction, everything. And The Haunting that Robert Wise did. Look at the remake. It's garbage compared to what Robert Wise, garbage. And there's so much garbage out there that we need collectors to take the garbage away. But I'm very hopeful. Look, we have the technology, we have the CGI, we can do Lovecraft now. Yeah. I was very excited when Richard Stanley started doing Color Out of Space and was going to do Dunwich Horror. Then he conveniently gets canceled by a Wiccan witch who he dated at one point or another. It's just absurd. You must separate people's private lives from their work. Yeah. Otherwise, you're not going to like anybody. Because I could right now, if I chose to, live on this, tell you what really some of your idols are really like. And would that mean you wouldn't watch them anymore? I'm not saying, the only man I ever met that lived up to everything was Vincent Price. He was as nice a guy in front of the camera as he was off camera. But that is rare. Everybody has a dark side. And if you really want to cancel somebody, there are ways to do it. But why would you want to do that? We're going to reach a point where there won't be anything left if we keep doing this.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because, you've known a lot of people, you've been around at a certain period in time in filmmaking. Have you ever been asked to be a creative consultant on anything?
A couple of times, usually on documentaries. But my problem with documentaries is they come to me after they've shot half their documentary. Oh, we were meaning to get to you. We just came back from Europe and I'm going, oh, great. I don't get to go anywhere. And now you're picking my brain but yeah, I've been a creative consultant on a lot of documentaries. As far as film goes, I haven't seen any films that had creative, they didn't need my input because they weren't using it anyway, some people pretty much know what they want and they just go for it,
Yeah.
With documentaries, I think they do need help, especially if you knew someone that was no longer with us, like in my case, a lot of people.
Yeah, no, David, didn't at one point Tim Lucas was going to do a Roger Corman biopic? Is that right?
I think so. I think he wrote a novel about the making of the trip. A long time ago, and it's still in print. And he gave it to Joe Dante, I believe, to direct, but it never happened. So I don't. Okay. You'd have to ask Tim about that. I don't know.
Yeah, I was curious.
But I just think that we're in an era now where does anyone remember the trip? Does anyone really want to know how it was made? Is LSD still some? It's just like the time sometimes your timing is important. Yeah. You were just mentioning to me, a lot of the movies, the Corman movies especially, were made at a specific time. They cannot be remade. People have tried to remake the Poe movies, and you have to go back to an era where people are a little bit more trustworthy about material, a little bit more naive. We've come through some really rough times, especially with this pandemic, and it's changed people. It's changed all of us. So, and we're beginning to notice it in the arts. Yeah. I think we're gonna get a lot of movies where people are still angry, where people are trying to go back to better times. And like you said, I don't think you can recreate a Mario Bava movie. I don't think you can recreate a moment in time when this and this happened. I think the closest thing we've had to someone going back in time and holding back time is what Tom Cruise did with Maverick. Mm-hmm. He's a 60-year-old man with a plot that he wouldn't be in because they don't have 60-year-old pilots getting up in the air. But good for him. He has literally brought the 80s back, but he's not going to be able to sustain it. Eventually he has to retire. And he's got this new Mission Impossible coming out where he's doing tons and tons of stunts. To me, he is someone that is so driven, it's kind of frightening.
Yeah.
Because of his Scientology background and everything. He's driven to defy time, to ignore critics, to do what he wants to do. And in this case, he's made more money than anyone. He has the highest grossing movie on the planet right now, and he's the biggest movie star in the world. He's eclipsed everybody, including Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is in a fat suit right now in Elvis. Tom Cruise is doing what he did in 1986 again.
Yeah.
No one else can. John Travolta can't do that because he's out. He makes his leading ladies look old.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting. I wrote a piece on the Burbs, and you know, it was kind of talking about how you know, we have this nostalgia cycle that's, I think, really interesting. It's usually like a 20 or 30 year cycle. So, for example, we're kind of nostalgic now for like the 80s and the 90s, but people in the 80s were kind of thinking about like the 50s or the 60s. What do you think about like this maybe oversaturation now of like glamorizing the 80s? I mean, do you like that? Do you think it's kind of eye roll?
Well, you know, I lived through the 80s. Thank you very much. I lived through the 90s, I think. You know, glamorizing the 80s. Okay. You know, I miss MTV. I miss rock videos in the way they were. I miss the atmosphere and the climate of the 80s, although I would never have said that in the 80s.
Yeah.
While I was living it. I don't think the movies, you know, I mean, look, I was on the set of Return of the Living Dead. I was on the set when Linnea Quigley did her big slut dance on the tombstones. That is now highly revered, as is the Monster Squad, highly revered. To me, they're just, you know, movies. They're good movies. They're fun movies. I don't regard them in the same way I do other movies from the 60s, but then I was, you know, my critical assessments of those films is based on, you know, having been around that, having discussed that with my peers at that time. It's just a different world now. And what I find interesting, though, I can go to a horror. We just had Monster Palooza this weekend. I didn't go because, you know, I'm still a little wary of going in crowds where everyone is not wearing masks in there. Because I don't think it's over, guys. And until it is, you have to be a little more careful. I think I'm just hoping that we all don't get sick because of it, but we'll see. But here's the deal. I could walk around that floor and a lot of people know me and they don't know who a lot of these people are we're talking about. They don't know about Karloff and Lugosi. They don't even know about Roger, which is why I mentioned with the trip. There are a lot of people have never seen it. It's not important anymore. It's only important to film scholars and people, monster kids, if you revere the 60s. But what you're just telling me, more people are revering the 80s than the 60s. Most young film buffs or film people, they have a girl that was at a museum and they asked her who Marilyn Monroe was. She didn't know. No. There are people 18 that don't know who James Dean was. So what do you do with people like that? I mean, you're really kind of talking to a wall there. Yeah. If they don't know these movies, they're not going to relate to them. And even though everything is available online, there's no excuse for someone saying, well, I don't know about that. But well, look it up. I had to go and find these movies the hard way, waiting for them to show up on television, watching TV Guide, you know, antiquated as all that sounds. Now it's all at your phone. It's all at your fingertips. YouTube. I just watched Murder by the Clock on YouTube. That was a lost film for a while. 1931. It was a pre-code thing. But there it is. You know, it's all there. And I just watched The Wizard of Babylon, the last 8 hours of Fassbender's life. That documentary had been suppressed for years. And I posted a picture of Rainier the other day on Facebook, and a guy gave me the link on YouTube to watch it. I'd never seen it. I was so grateful to watch it. Apparently it'd been on YouTube for a while. So why is it with every bit of technology that we have, we can keep track of all this stuff, no one watches, no one knows who you're talking about? I dare not talk about anything in the 40s or 50s because they don't know.
And it's so interesting when you were saying about how, there's so much information out there. There's everything kind of at your fingertips, and it's so kind of. I'm so utterly impressed with you and other historians of a certain age, because you did. When I was doing my film guide, I had a lot of. I mean, I had the internet as a huge resource, but that wasn't the case for you, a lot of you. You had to get the firsthand accounts from the actual people. You had to, even if you wanted to see a film, you couldn't just rent it. You would have to set up a screening or kind of.
Oh my God. I can tell you, when I was in New York back in the late 70s, William K. Everson, one of the great film historians, author of many books. He had a wonderful apartment in New York where he had theater seats in his living room. And when I met him, I was doing the Joe Franklin show, which was hilarious. And I was writing for Films and Filming in London. And Bill Everson showed me in one day The Black Camel with Lugosi and Warner Rowland, a Charlie Chan I'd never heard of, The Florentine Dagger, Lucrezia Borgia poison movie from the 30s, and Murder by the Clock. All three of these and he had written about them in one of his many books for Citadel. And I was very lucky that I was kind of taught by the great Carlos Clarence was an early influence of mine, who wrote the first illustrated history of the horror film. He was encyclopedic about horror movies. John Cabal, I worked with, traveled with. He was my mentor, and John had one of the great photo archives of the world of film memorabilia and ephemera, as they call it. So my background is pretty well stocked with accomplished, famous Kevin Brownlow, another one. I helped him. did research on Before the Parade Passes, the silent film book that's so highly regarded. So I was very lucky that the people that I learned film history from were the best. Yeah. And now, I'm trying with what I do to impart as much information as I can while I'm still able to, before where we all go to the great, as Barbara Steele used to call it, the great Aldi Law, the beyond, darling, where we all go.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. And as somebody that, loves film, loves to write and talk about it, I'm just in utter awe of you, because you've written so many great things, the commentary tracks, the people that you've actually not only just interviewed, but as you said, got to know personally, is just staggering. I just think that's so incredible.
Well, you're way too kind to me. But Mike and I have been friends for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And I could go back to, we were, when we first got online together, it was hilarious. But it's just like I've watched you kind of grow from what was the show we did that there was an eyeball in your martini, or what was
that? Yeah. Oh my gosh. What
was that?
Yeah, it was like a little, like, kind of campy blog, like little blog
that was
thing.
One of your first things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I met you when you first got online, I think.
Yeah.
And that's a decade ago. Can you?
Yeah, and gosh, I would be so embarrassed to read my stuff now or back then.
Well, how do you think I feel about it? Well, by the way, you have my two books, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And these are still from Bear Manor. I owe them a third one. Yes, Ben, I'm gonna do it. I'm so slow, but anyway, I've got one more, Del Valle of the Dolls. Then my trilogy for Bear Manor is done. And then I have a gay book that I did a long time ago, and it's just sat kind of gestating. And the reason that is because when I was doing Lost Horizons Beneath the Hollywood Sign, I wrote a chapter on my late partner, Chris, who died of AIDS in 2004. And it only was just, 59. No, he was 49. What am I saying? He was 49 years old. And I went through that last year, which I hope no one has to go through, losing someone to HIV. It's a fucking nightmare. And I wrote this chapter, about 25 pages, one of my longer chapters called Unconditional Love. And when I submitted it to Bear Manor, they had an editor. I had an editor. And he said, David, I'm going to remove this chapter from this book because it's not appropriate for all the other stories are more Hollywood. This is more personal. He said, I'm taking this chapter out and I want you to write another book around it, which is what I've done. So I've written all the stories, much like I did with Lost Horizons, about my time in New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco around 1983 when the AIDS epidemic was so prominent. And I lost so many friends. My New York phone book was just empty because they were all dead. And, you know, you never forget that, you know. So I think when the pandemic hit, I was already prepared for it. You know, it was very rough because I'm a very social person and I kind of just withdrew from seeing people except like this on Zoom, or a couple or three of my friends kept me going, you know, would go out and we'd sit in the park or go in open air places because I was afraid to go anywhere. But I handled it because I'm accustomed to handling tragedy and bad times. And it kind of makes you a little more, you're strengthened in your own resolve. And I also can enjoy my time by myself. You have to like yourself if you're going to survive. And fortunately, I like myself. So, you know, I spend time with me and it's a big party. It's fun, you know, but not everybody can do that. And I just think I'm just grateful we all got through the other end of it right now, because here we are talking to each other in 2022 after 2.5 years of really hard times for all of us. And I think the movie industry has suffered for it too, not to mention all this Me Too and calling people out on their personal behavior is, you know, and it's just, I was appalled by the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing. I just, because here we were dealing with 19 little children being shot to death in a way they couldn't identify their bodies. And we're worrying about these two sleazeballs. I'm sorry. I love Johnny Depp, but you know, the more you learn about his private life, I'm sorry. You know, Keanu Reeves is 3 times the man he is and always will be, because he's a real man. He doesn't like get in a fetal position with $12,000 bottles of wine. And, you know, it's just, you know, I mean, come on. That kind of behavior is just, we shouldn't know about it, what he does with his money.
Yeah. And I think it's also, I mean, you know, this month especially, I think is a good month to kind of, you know, we want to celebrate where we're at as a community. But I think, you know, it's important to look back and, you know, we need to tell these stories and hear these stories about, you know, the height of the AIDS epidemic and about a lot of people losing their loved ones. You know, that's a part of our history that we need to not forget.
Well, you know, when I hear about people saying, well, I couldn't see my family because of COVID-19, he died, Stuart Gordon died without seeing his family because they couldn't get into the hospital. It was a nightmare. But that happened to me in the 80s with AIDS patients. If you weren't a member of the family, you couldn't see them. You had to wear like the kind of suiting you'd see in Them, where they're going down into a tunnel where they're filled with nitrous, you know, where they're filled nitrous oxide, what am I saying? Where they're filled with, you know, poison gas. You know, this is all, you know, we went through a really horrific time with AIDS when people didn't know what it was. I was in New York when no one could figure it out. We didn't know it was from sexual. We didn't know. And when I came back to LA, it was the same thing. And I just did a documentary on Studio One, the gay discotheque here in Los Angeles that was very popular back in the late 70s and 80s. And it died around 1991. But half the people that worked there died of AIDS. Over half. And the stories are just the most depressing you can ever listen to. And I told the people when we were making it, and I was a consultant on that as well. I said, I can't go through this anymore. I will talk about it now, but I'm not going to talk about losing my partner anymore. I'm not going to talk about what it was like to deal with straight people and the way they were demonizing gay people, and religion, which is the worst. The worst. I used to say, because I was a Catholic, I used to say, you know, religion gives comfort and hope. No, it's a false reality. And all it does is give certain people power over you. It's nothing mystical or holy. It's pure evil, and it just needs to go away. And the Catholic Church with it. I'm so not into religion, and I've just seen what it's caused. And it should not be in politics, but there you are. But you know.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, again, like, I think that, you know, this, you know, you have to take the good with the bad, and not, I mean, and I don't mean to oversimplify, but
yeah, I know.
We definitely, we need to hear those stories and be reminded that, you know, I mean, unfortunately, HIV is still a thing, and people, it's good to educate people and, you know your status and all that good stuff. You know, to pivot again to the Trevor Project, I think that's a really great organization that helps the LGBTQ youth, where, you know, that's probably something that when I was coming out, I would have loved. I didn't even know that was a resource at the time. I'm sure that that's something that especially the older generation probably wish they would have had. Part of me, a huge part of me is so happy that this younger generation is, it's not that we're there completely, we're far from it, but I am so happy and grateful that they seem to have a easier time. It makes me a little jealous that I, you know, didn't have kind of that, you know, community. I mean, there was a community there, but it wasn't really that well known. Like, we didn't really have terms like non-binary and things like that. So yeah, I imagine that probably goes double and triple for, like, you know, David, you and the older gay generation.
But you know, one of the things about the Trevor Project that's great is that gay and lesbian people need to have someone they can call if they feel it's too much. And the internet has so much bullying on it that that I was never a part to or understood, but that you can literally be talked into killing yourself if you are so susceptible to it. And I'll tell you, when I went back to El Paso, Texas in 2013 to see my dad before he died, I came back to Los Angeles, and I came back on a train, and there was this kid who was like barely 18, very overweight, African-American kid who wanted to be a fashion designer. And he had left the University of Texas the very first year and was running away. He had very little money on him, and he was confiding in me on this trip. And I gave him he didn't have any money. I gave him $20. And I said, when you arrive in Los Angeles, I want you to go to the Gay and Lesbian Center on Schrader and tell them you're 18 and you don't have a place to live and you want to get into retail. So the good news is, because I was going to the Gay and Lesbian Center then for my medical benefits when I first came here, because I wasn't 65, so I couldn't get, I was still without insurance. So about a month later, I was at the Beverly Center and I ran into this kid. He was managing this incredible boutique, and his life was all turned around. So if you don't think these organizations make a difference, they do. And I was a witness to that. So the Trevor Project is definitely worth your time and money, because if you can just save one young person from killing themselves or going through a sleepless, night worrying about whatever, to realize there are people out there that have had this. See, I think it's important to know you're not the only one.
Yeah.
I think loneliness and like this pandemic has put people, isolated elderly people, isolated people that have addictions. Can you imagine you're an alcoholic or a drug addict and you're able to order stuff online and just stay at home and zone out? We don't even know. The statistics aren't even in, or the children that are being abused. And, it's all, we just need as many of these organizations as we can fund and get going.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that story you told was just like, I think that, it's amazing that, again, there are resources like this, and I'm really happy that we can highlight the Trevor Project as one specific nonprofit. And just really, I think, this is something that I talked about in my last stream. It's as much about awareness as it is just, donating. It's like, again, this resource was available to me when I was first coming out and a teenager, but I didn't know about it. It was that, I came from a pretty small town, which, as a lot of gay people know, is not especially great. That's another thing, that just not only raising money, but just this resource is available. And as you say, it's just that one little thing that could make a huge impact in someone's life, like that person that you met.
He was, and coming through Texas, I was born in El Paso, Texas, but I didn't live there because my dad was in the Air Force. But when I went back to El Paso, I just thought of this. When I went back to see my dad, it was June 2013, which was Pride Month in El Paso, Texas, if you can imagine such a thing, because El Paso is a very homophobic place. Latino culture is very homophobic because it's trapped with the Catholic Church. As long as you have a church that tells you you're an abomination, even though this Pope is trying to, move around, it's just ludicrous that he even has any power of anything. After the last one, who was like Dracula, the one that was able to, unheard of, a Pope resigns. It's a job for life. I'm sorry, you don't just, I'm tired of this, I'm going to get my Ferrari and go off, which is what he did. But I was in El Paso, and you'll love this. This was the week of Pride. What happened? It was on the news. These two gay guys go into a In-N-Out burger or a kind of a fast food thing in El Paso. They're holding hands. They make their order. This is Pride Week. They make their order, and after they make their order, they walk away, and one of them kisses the other one on the cheek. The guy that was doing the fast food, the short order cook, called the El Paso Police Department and had these guys arrested for indecent exposure. When they were taken in handcuffs to the El Paso police station, fortunately, the sergeant on duty wasn't an idiot. And he said, "What did you guys just do?" "Well, they were kissing. Those faggots were kissing in public." And the guy said, "You can't arrest them for that. That's not the definition of indecent exposure." And it was Pride Week. This is 2013. So don't live in Texas is the first thing I'll tell you. But secondly, homophobia is alive and well, even in enlightened times. And it's always wrapped around some sort of religious idea or something that makes one person feel superior to another. If religion can find itself to just being love for everyone, that would be fine. But I think you have to look for a movie like Barbarella to find that. You're certainly not going to find it in the Catholic Church. But in any case, that's my little soapbox for that. But can you imagine I'm in El Paso for Pride Week and someone gets arrested for being gay in public? And they had one gay bar downtown called the El Whatever. And what a great name for a bar. I didn't go in there because, I thought it just looked too dangerous, because El Paso is also a very dangerous place.
Yeah. I mean, so I won't mention their name, but I know I talked to another author, and I guess also historian, and he was saying about how now he's a cis heterosexual person, and of course knows I'm gay and everything, and he's like, oh yeah, he's like, well, there's not really any homophobia anymore, like everybody just it's like implying that it was kind of like trendy, and I know he didn't mean like, I knew he meant well, but it kind of highlighted the fact that, as you say, yeah, it's still alive and well, unfortunately. I don't think that that's ever going to change, unfortunately. I think it's going to get better, to put an optimistic spin on it, because I kind of an optimistic person. I think that that's a great point, David. I think that we also kind of need to know that, yeah, it's like this stuff still happens, unfortunately, even in 2022, as in 2013, and so on and so on. So yeah, it's,
well, we still have racism. I
Yeah.
mean, the fact that what they've done in show business now is that they're black actors are in huge demand, because they want everything to be, they want to change the whole structure to where a leading man is not, it's like it's a totally different, and whether it's Doctor Who or whatever, you're getting all black casts of things. The Man Who Fell to Earth was just remade with a black actor. And so now white actors are beginning to feel like what black actors used to feel like when all the parts were kind of one-sided, but it's tipped over in the other direction now. And so, yes, you have homophobia and you have racism. And all of this kind of trying to reinvent history is making the middle America Trumpsters even more determined and angry. And that anger is being brought out in bullets now, because we're having a shooting every week now of different, I was worried when we had gay pride here that there could be an incident, because you just don't know. The whole country's armed and dangerous. So I just think you have to be really careful. That thing that happened with the children, in that 19 little kids being shot to death by an 18-year-old that bought his gun and thousands of rounds of ammunition without anything, was far more interesting to me than whether Johnny Depp could get out of this evil marriage thing he was in. You have to get your priorities straight about what's important. Celebrity breakups are not important. They're distracting, and the media covers them so well. They should be covering this thing right now with the rioting with the Capitol. That should get the same attention Amber Heard is getting. Get our priorities straight, people, or we're going to be in real trouble if we're not already.
Yeah.
I've lived long enough to see this again. I lived through Nixon and I lived through Trump, but it's not over. And you have to, especially gay people, have to really get out there and vote, and not just, lay back and let other people make your decisions for you. You got to be proactive about everything,
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll probably wrap up here shortly, but we mentioned one of your new commentaries. Is there anything else that you?
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, so I've got Mata Hari coming out from Kino, Terror from the Sky from Kino, Gypsy Wildcat, a Maria Montez movie that's going into a box set of Maria Montez movies. She was the queen of Technicolor. But what makes Gypsy Wildcat interesting, if you want to know what the Wolfman would have looked like in color, then watch Gypsy Wildcat, because it's the same sets, only in Technicolor. The same gypsy forest. And it's got Gail Sondergaard, the Spider Woman, in it, and a number of other, it's a Universal picture, and it's from the 40s. So it's got the same kind of pedigree as the Universal horror movies, only it's Maria Montez. And all I learned from Maria Montez, who I would never say is an actress, she's a personality and a movie star. But she always, no matter what her role, she would say at one point, I have spoken. I have spoken. So she has spoken. So what more can I say? I have spoken. So that's what I learned about Maria Montez.
That's great.
Anyway, so I've got those coming out, and the Studio One documentary, Studio One Forever, should be out at the end of the year. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but maybe next time I'll have a whole new list of things that are happening.
There you
go. I'll talk about it. But I'm just glad we did this, because you and I have been meaning to do something like
yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah, and again, you know, just another quick shout out. We will have the link for the Trevor Foundation donation link for 2 weeks. So if you can't necessarily donate like right now, no need to worry. You know, there'll be plenty of time to donate, and even if you can't donate, just sharing is so helpful and amazing. You know, times are kind of tough right now, so I get if you can't really donate anything, but just sharing it, taking like that 2 seconds to share it to your socials is a huge help. So gosh, this was really awesome. Thank you so much, David. And
it was fun. I'm glad. You know, I didn't realize we talked so long, but once we get started,
I know, right?
Can't stop. And Brandon, I'm going to look at your movie.
Well, thank you. I'm curious to see what you'll think. It's a wild one.
Okay. Well, I like wild. I like wild stuff. Come on.
See, I think all 3 of us should do a commentary track.
I think so too. Well, let's find a movie and we'll do it.
All right. I'll put it out there.
Okay, man. I'm down. I'll talk to you real soon, dudes.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.